Today, we have a special guest on the Shattered Shield. Her credits include productions like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, NYPD Blue, Joan of Arcadia, Spider-Man 2 and 3, The Mentalist, CSI New York, Scandal, You're the Worst, Magicians, and Hux, which she actually directed, wrote, edited, and produced. As a listener of this podcast, you will know her as Farah on The Shield. Mageina Tovah joins me now. How are you doing, Mageina?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course, of course. We're here to discuss your time on The Shield today, which is actually one of my favorite guest stars the show ever did. So I'm
Oh,
really
wow.
curious to find out how you got that role of Farah.
Well, I'd actually been working for about 4 years as an actor by then, and I just had an audition for it. But I do remember the callback really clearly because we were all waiting to audition, and the producers walked by, Puckman in my ears, and one of them stopped to ask me what I was listening to, and I told them that I was listening to Nine Inch Nails, The Downward Spiral, and they all seemed to really get a kick out of that.
Well, so from what I've heard, the actual show, because I've emailed or not emailed, I've interviewed a few people at this point, and they're saying that even though it had a reputation of being like a really gritty show, it was pretty much a tight knit cast. But I'm curious, how much of a learning curve is involved when you guest star in a show? Like, is it kind of like jumping into a club that's already been formed? Like, how is it guest starring in general and on this show?
Well, I think in general, when you guest starred on a number of shows, you just sort of get used to going onto set and doing what you need to do, sort of regardless of what's happening around you. But this show was particularly wonderful. I think they were really used to having actors come in for disturbing stuff and really intense
Yeah.
stuff. And so they were great at creating a really inviting environment. I'm actually still friends with and have continued to work with a lot of the cast and crew. Like Kenny Johnson and I went on to work on Crossing Jordan, a couple other things, and we're always sort of looking for opportunities to work together. And
Yeah.
the short film that you talked about, Hux, which you can
Mm-hmm.
actually watch at huxfilm.com. I'm working on a feature now, and Kenny has a large part in it. And then also, when I was doing the fundraiser, I did a Kickstarter for the short, and Sean Ryan, Michael Chiklis, and Kenny all promoted it and helped
Oh,
support me
that's
when I was
great.
doing the fundraiser. It was really wonderful. They're
That's
they're really
excellent.
wonderful people. Yeah.
So you had actually, you said you've been working as an actress for 4 years by the
Yeah.
time you got into this show. Farah, the reason why I like her is she's such a manipulative character, I feel.
Hmm.
But I don't really. It was one of those things where you played her so well, I couldn't ever decide if she was actually doing it out of malice or just out of habit as a person. Like it was something that she did, and she's really, especially in season 7, comes back as somebody who's went down a dark path. So I'm curious, what was it like to get into the headspace of a character like Farah?
It was she was, like you said, she was a really intense character.
Yeah.
I think that working on that first episode of The Shield that I did was where I really learned about endurance and conservation of energy. And
Mm-hmm.
I because I remember like the first day of filming, I had an early call and we didn't get to my scene until late in the day. And I tried to sort of stay in the headspace all the way up until we shot, and it was
Right.
totally exhausting. And that's sort of where I learned to create a switch for myself to, to just turn it on when I needed it, and to do what I needed to do when I had to do it. So she was a really intense one. I'd played similar characters. I played a couple prostitutes before, on The Guardian and on NYPD
Yeah.
Blue, but this was the most in-depth and really the best explored character of that sort of type.
How much backstory, like when you walk into a guest star role or Farah, how much
Huh?
backstory do you get? Because The Shield, they really never even talked about anybody's backstory. And with Farah, I always felt a level of depth that you had with her. You could tell there was a lot of stuff that she had went through. And I was
Mhm.
always curious, like, is that something that they like hand you a paragraph of and like, hey, okay, here's the character you're playing? Or is it something that you have to like sit there and think about and then put that into your performance? Like, how much do they really help you along with that in terms of like where your character has been?
Yeah, so this is something in general with guest stars is you kind of have to come up with it all. Especially on the show, they're very open to talking and figuring things out. But you have to come with what you think the character is, and I think that's how you end up getting auditions, getting the part, is whether what you've brought is what
they're looking for.
Bring something new. If it's I had one casting director tell me once that the casting director for Grey's Anatomy and Private Practice, and they told me that they always bring me in when they don't know what to do with a character. Then I'll bring something in, because I think that's just a really good way to go into auditions in general, is to have a really figured out in-depth idea of where this character is coming from. And you don't usually get anything. I mean, you'll get like the little breakdown that they send out to the casting directors about, she's this tall, or she's,
sure,
this whatever, but you don't usually get much. Yeah.
Interesting. See, because I have like this tertiary involvement. Like I've never auditioned for anything. So I have this idea of like, oh, well, here they hand you the sheet of paper and it's got like your character's backstory.
No, it really is not like that. But it's part of the wonderful part about acting, is that you that's where a lot of your creativity gets to be used, is in developing who this character should be, right?
I don't ever remember. I had listened to the commentary in preparation that you were on, and I didn't hear anybody ask you if you had done any research into the character of Connie, because when you come onto the show, she has gone, and your character Farah really has. She's really representative of that character. And I want you, if you can, to talk about the relationship that Farah had with Vic. And if you thought there was actually any connection that she was actually trying to make with him. And I have two pieces of evidence I'd like to bring to you before you answer that.
Sure.
Or at least two different opposing pieces of evidence. When she's getting asked by Vic where she's from, like she has this smile on her face, and she's she's like, oh, San Jose, and she's so happy. She looks so happy that he would be like asking questions about her personal life. And then when Smooth kind of roughs her up a little bit, he checks her bruises, and you're kind of looking into his eyes, like it's a very desperate look that she gives him. But then on the flip side, she makes up the story about her sister getting turned out and all this, just to, again, manipulate him into helping her. So what do you think she ever really wanted to make a connection with Vic, and what do you think their relationship was all about?
I think that Vic made sense to Farah. And I think she sees his strength, and she wants it on her side. And she also has this really different relationship to violence, and I think Vic figured that out. And you see Farah choose Vic over Smooth when he throws her against the wall and puts the gun in her mouth. She didn't come from a good place, right? I think violence was a long time part of her life. Struggling to survive was probably a big part of her life. And I definitely think there's a connection when Vic puts the gun in her mouth, and Farah sort of sees that as a pact. He's showing his dominance, and she's accepting it and believes that his protection will go along with it. And so she picks his violence, so Smooth's violence. And I really think she believes, there is this sense that she's sort of reaching for who will protect her, right? I think she really believes that she'll have Vic after that, because in her mind, violence is sort of an expression of love, or the closest thing to love that she's ever experienced.
It's so hard to think about that.
I know, but I think that's where I saw it coming from, that in her mind, these love and violence and protection and violence were sort of so intertwined, because she probably came from violence. And that is a way that she sees, any interest in her, any interest is better than nothing, right? And and he used this language that she understood, that this language of violence, and promised her his protection. It became clear at the end when he tells her to get on the next bus, that he was just using her. And I really think that changed Farah, because I think that was probably the last time that she believed in someone's ability to really be on her side. Like, I think it made her someone who just looks for the next opportunity, the next check
Oh, that's
move,
terrible.
It's
terrible. I believe that too.
And I think we see that at the end of season 7. I mean, at the end of the episode, she sort of made that move where she's like, okay, well, now what do I have to do? Okay, I have to become, this next
Yeah.
prince bottom bitch. And then we see again in season 7, that's really all she is she's just moving from one opportunity to the next. And then at that point, violence is just sort of an any everyday piece of life. She doesn't even really react to it. When Vic throws her on the ground and against the car, she just sort of laughs at it.
That just makes me hate Vic even more.
I know, it's so sad. It's really sad. But
Oh, it's terrible.
yeah, yeah,
That's a great perspective because I always thought like after you do that gun scene, which I want to talk about here in a little bit, you give him this look. It's like this very like glazed over,
yeah.
like almost acceptance of what just happened.
Hmm.
But I always thought that was kind of just like a natural reaction that she would have. It wasn't some. Now that you're saying that, I'm thinking what you're saying sounds exactly correct. Like she kind of bought what he was selling.
Yeah,
Oh, that makes me furious.
yeah. No, I really do, and I think that's why she was desperate. Her whole
Yeah.
life has probably been desperate, but I really think she went, oh,
Mm-hmm.
he's gonna take care of me now. And it doesn't, regardless of how he treats her, she sees that he's a strong person who will protect her against the worst thing. And yeah, I know that look that you're talking about. When I rewatched them, I know which one you're talking about, and he sort of like caresses her face a little bit,
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
she's like, oh, okay. Because that's what makes her go, oh, because, right before that, she's like, I don't know if I can cuss on this
Sure you can. Yeah.
podcast. She's like, fuck this. I'm going to go, like,
Right.
I'm going to get killed if I do it the way that you're trying to get me to do it. And so screw this. I'm going to go back to Smooth. I'll work it out somehow. And then Vic sees he's going to lose this opportunity, and he pulls that move on her where he's like,
Yeah.
I think he gets it. He's like, oh, this is what she responds to. This is how she knows that she's mine now. And she
Right.
goes, yeah, okay, you're right. And so at the end, that's
Mm.
she really thought they were going to like work together now, and that she had someone finally on her side who was actually more than a pimp, that was,
Yeah.
you know.
That's terrible. That's
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah.
So how was it actually working with Chickless? This show at this point that you came on, from what I remember, was very critically acclaimed. Chickless had won an Emmy. Did you find that intimidating? And bringing up that gun scene when you guys get
Yeah.
into that, what are your memories of shooting that?
So just in general I talked to Chick before I did this interview, and he brought up the amount of trust that we had to have for each other to really make those scenes work. First day of filming, we were in the makeup trailer, and he was so kind and so warm, and he was like, please excuse my chill, when we're on set, because he was
Interesting.
gonna, yeah. And so that scene, I do have memories of that scene. It was really intense. Somehow they hadn't completely shut down all the foot traffic, and we scared the crap out of some woman that
Someone walking
we
by.
had to stop. Yeah, she screamed, and we had to stop in the middle of the take. After we finished filming, Chick and I had this moment. It was right at the end of the day. I'd finished everything, and somehow we were in the parking lot because we were on location where our trailers were. It was just the two of us, and we sort of met each other. I was walking to the trailers, he was walking away, and he was really upset because he was really emotional because he just hates. He told me how much he hates violence towards women, and he'd actually tried
Yeah.
to get that gun scene cut from the episode.
Really?
Yeah. I've heard people talk about how if there's a singer who's supposed to be a bad singer on like TV or film or in a play, that you actually have to have a really good singer play that part because they can control their singing and
Right.
they know what bad singing should really sound like. And I feel like it's sort of the same with Michael Chiklis in that it took someone as sort of caring and as sensitive as him to really know how to make violence like that affecting. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
There's another story I heard in the commentary actually where they had done in season 1. He had to go into it was like a sex club where they had like children in there, and he was just apparently he said he was only going to film in a certain amount of time, so they better make sure they got it right, or he was going to be done with it.
Yeah, he is a really loving, kind guy, and he has a daughter, And, I think he's really sensitive to all of that. And, that's kind of what you need in an actor, especially, and what you'd hope to have in an actor who has to deal with stuff like this, especially when they're working with another actor, and you want somebody who really cares about how it all happens and how, and that everybody is safe and that you all get through it okay.
Well, you come back 4 years after the first episode, which was Bottom Bitch, and it's so funny because I actually watched this show when it first aired, and it felt like it had been forever. When you came on screen the first time, I had the same reaction he did, where it was like, "Holy crap!"
Yeah. Well,
so how did that come about?
Well, so actually in that same conversation at the end of filming in season 3, my episode in season 3, he said to me at the very end of our conversation, he was like, "I'm not even going to say goodbye because I know you're going to be back." And it took 4 years, but he was right. And I think they were just, they were kind of wrapping things up in season 7, and they wanted to just bring back some of the characters that they found interesting and that they enjoyed having on the show. And I think, luckily Farrah was one of them. She's a sight for sore eyes, for sure, when she comes.
Do you enjoy playing characters like Farrah? Because I imagine, like, in my mind, it's not an easy thing to do. Like, I would always watch like Vic. Let's take Vic for example. Like, I can't imagine doing stuff like that is something that's easy. You're giving me an example of Chiklis having trouble filming that scene, and I'm sure he had trouble throughout the entire time he's on the show. So when you do characters like that, do you find it enjoyable to play them?
I do. That's still one of my favorite characters I've gotten to play, because it was so beautifully written. Like, it's dark stuff, and but there's something so sad and at the same time like intriguing about someone who, like we were talking about, like sees violence as love or protection. I mean, I see acting as trying to figure out why people are the way they are, right? Or and how they do the things that they do. And so it was really, really interesting, and it was written with such depth, and it was really different. I played a lot of little nerds, like little nerd characters, like in Spider-Man. But in fact, there was this really crazy moment when, after I'd done this episode in season 3, where it was between Spider-Man 2 and 3, and I went down to the lot and somehow found myself in a room with Sam Raimi, Laura Ziskin, and Grant Curtis. And I showed them my reel. Started with the Spider-Man 2 scene, which they loved. They were so excited. And the next scene was the gun scene from The Shield. And it got really quiet and kind of awkward feeling. And then Sam and Laura looked at me and they're like, "What happened to our sweet little Ursula?"
Yeah.
And so, like, you don't want to play just the same kind of characters all the time. There, I was playing a lot of little nerds, and then I was also playing, like, drug addicts and prostitutes, and it gave you some, variety and difference to what I was doing and what people were getting to know me for and everything.
I do remember a long time ago when I actually first went to see Spider-Man, I recognized you because of the Shield. I was like, "That's Farrah!"
And I'm sure you were like, "Wait a minute." Wow. She's cleaned up a little. Yeah.
So the Shield's been off the air for 10 years now. They just did the Blu-ray release, and they had like a reunion and all that. And I was curious on your thoughts. Okay, so that show actually takes place within 3 years' time, supposedly. It's kind of a confusing timeline, but we would imagine that we see Farrah in season 3 and then season 7. So she really like spirals pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Where do you think she would be 10 years after this show is over? I have this evil thought. If we ever get Sean to restart, or maybe do a follow-up, she could be a character that would be involved in it, but you'd have to consider what she would go through in that decade's worth of time if it was set that far after. So what do you think?
She was pretty heavy into the drugs the last time we saw her. So if that didn't take her down, I think she probably at this point had her own ring of prostitutes, maybe, I think that once she sort of got, I think she, after the betrayal, what she felt was a betrayal by Vic, I think it became all about really much more just surviving, getting to the next, not just surviving, but like finding the best way to survive in this sort of horrible world that she lives in.
Yeah.
And, you know, moving to the next situation when the one that she was in wasn't working for her anymore. I think she's pretty smart about how to work people. And I think if she's still alive, then I think she's probably working on whatever the next play is, you know?
I had two thoughts. I thought she would either just be like, I never really thought of her kind of getting her thoughts together enough to have her own ring, which I thought would be, now you saying that would be great.
Yeah.
I thought maybe she would get clean and then had some kind of run in with Vic later on in the future where he would have to try to like believe that she was actually going to try to be a good person, you know?
Yeah.
But I like that idea better because she's not somebody who gives up, I don't
She
think.
really doesn't. No.
And I think she's smart enough because you see in the end of Bottom Bitch, which is a season 3 episode, she does find a way to become the queen real quick.
Queen. Yeah, she does, and that's her thing. And you know, I mean, to survive, just to survive as long, you know, even if it's only 3 years or whatever it's been, you know, in that world is something, right? And you know, I really do think she had some street smarts. I think she really did know how to work people. You know, that's sort of probably what she's been doing all her life. I kind of think, you know, in my idea of what her backstory was, she didn't have support growing up, you know, or much support growing up. And so probably her whole life she's been just fighting to get, you know, somewhere. And really after 3 with Vic, I think she makes it's like, oh, I got to figure out how to do this without relying necessarily on someone protecting me. I mean, she still has a pimp in season 7, but he's even, you know, even more violent and horrible.
She assassinates him.
She assassinates him, man. Like, yeah, she gets that taken care of. She says to him that horrible last monologue she has at Vic, where she's like, you know, I'm walking, talking pussy, and I'm still, you know, leading you around by the dick. Like, no one pulled anything over on Vic, you know, like, and somehow she did twice.
And that right there is why she's one of my favorite guest stars, because you just said it. Like, she didn't just get him once. I mean, every now and then somebody would come along and they'd pull one over on Vic, and even that was very rare. I'm pretty sure, there might be one person, but I doubt it. I'm pretty sure she's the only one who gets this dude twice with a slightly modified game. So,
you know,
right.
And so that means she's pretty smart in at least how to maneuver and manipulate people. And I
that
think again,
last line where she's talking about you ever thought about cutting it off and all this, and then she laughs, is one of the most haunting things I've ever heard. And I would like to congratulate you on that line, because it's incredible.
Thank you. We really do see that in her at that point. Like, you know, fuck you. You're not going to take it. You screwed me over. You're not going to take care of me. I'm going to use you. And that's what I think she's gotten now. There was still a little bit of good for her in her, a little bit of wanting to connect in season 3 until Vic kind of betrayed her. And then after that, she was like, well, I'm going to use you now. You know, I'm going to get what I need. Yeah.
This is probably a obvious question, but I want to ask it anyway because I'd like to have it on audio record.
Okay.
But if Sean was to bat around the idea of a follow-up, would you be interested in playing her again?
Oh, hell yeah, man. You know, he actually did. So I worked with Sean a couple times after this. He did during Obama's re-election, he did a promo that I did for him. And then he also did, at the same time that Sons of Anarchy was a pilot, he did a pilot that was about the motorcycle world.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was called 1%. It was with Donal Logue, and he had me as Donal Logue's like main
girl.
But yeah, main girl. And you know, of course, I would just to work with all of those guys again. But again, like that is she's an interesting character. She's still one of my favorite
Yeah.
characters I've played.
Last question I got for you is, what is your biggest takeaway from working on the show?
I think the thing that I really learned on The Shield is that you should work with good people, that when you're in a position of power, you can create an environment where even like the scariest and craziest moments can feel safe for an actor.
Yeah.
It's something that I'm going to do my best to as I work on this Hux feature film, in a producing and directing position. And it's something I've seen also. You mentioned I'm on the show The Magicians right now, and they are also like tremendously supportive to their cast and crew, and it just makes anything possible, And and here's a really funny little connection. There's a character on. So I rewatched both episodes for this, and Rizwan Manji, who plays Tick Pickwick on The Magicians, is in season 7, episode 7, also of the
Really?
show, which is totally crazy. I did not. When I saw him, I was like, I think I know you, but I didn't realize how. And then,
That's excellent.
Yeah. So
Okay,
so
well,
I
thank
think
you so much for doing this. I appreciate
totally.
this. This was a lot of fun. I'm kind of like irritated now that I see Vic in like a more evil light than I did before.
I know. But
Man.
he was coming off of dealing with the whole Connie situation and
Yeah.
all of that, and
But this is what we do, isn't it? We make excuses for Vic.
yeah, totally, right. Totally, for
Well,
sure.
if you guys want to keep up with Mageina, she's at Mageina on Twitter. Is there anything else? We talked about The Magicians. Is there any other projects you want to talk about?
The
Hux
big.
is great. I think
Oh,
that
I'm so happy to hear that.
I'd like to see that explored more. If you ever get the time to do it, I'd like to see a
Yes,
follow up.
I'm working. So I'm working on it right now. Actually, the feature version, which as long as we can coordinate schedules, Kenny will be in as well.
Oh, that'll be great.
Yeah, and you can watch the short at Huxfilm, HUXFILM.com, and you can check out all the rest of the stuff I'm doing at MageinaTovah.com as well. You can also check out my artwork. I do visual art on MageinaTovah.com as well, and I have prints for sale there as well.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.